This episode is sponsored by McKelvey Insurance Group. If you've ever felt confused or overwhelmed by insurance, McKelvey Insurance Group keeps it simple. They're an independent agency, which means they compare options from multiple providers to find coverage that actually fits you, not just one company's policy. No pressure, no jargon, just honest guidance and real help. You can get a quick quote or a policy review at McKelveyINS.com or call 618-623-0080. Thanks to McKelvey Insurance Group for supporting the show. This episode is sponsored in part by Light Source Psychotherapy. If anxiety, panic, trauma, sleep issues, or big life transitions have you feeling stuck, their team works with kids, teens, adults, couples, and families in Belleville, Illinois, through teletherapy or even walk and talk outdoors. Evidence-based care like CBT, DBT, EMDR, and more, built around what matters most to you. Learn more and book at findyourlightsource.com.
Welcome, everybody, the Anonymous Podcast Network. Needed to hear that. Season 1, episode number 4. Bobby Orr. What's up?
This is it.
Hi. We're in different locations.
Yeah.
It's like we scooted our chairs over around the table.
You may think that the room is just gotten more and more spacious, but we actually just pivoted.
It's because of my body image issue.
Yeah.
I felt that the camera on me from the other angle made me look fat. Oh, what's that saying? No, your face does. From Tommy Boy.
I don't want you to be critical of yourself.
Right.
That's the primary.
That's the line, though.
Yeah.
Right?
Does the suit is the line. Yeah.
What my worry though, Chaz, is as I'm setting up my little timer to make sure we don't go 4 hours. Like,
sure.
We just dropped an episode on the flagship Parental Anonymous with a friend Triple X, and like we hit the 3-hour mark.
Wow.
And if he didn't have somewhere to be, thank God it was the building across the campus, we would still be here. I mean, we were going between him and myself, knowing how to talk a lot. He's got a great story.
Yeah.
But now I'm looking at this camera as I'm sitting in this chair, and I don't. It's zooming right. It's like right at my abdomen, my 6-pack.
We got plenty of space to unpack this if you'd like.
Yeah, let's maybe on a different episode. I know you got some things you want to talk about tonight.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, we all have bodies, so
Sure.
if we need to talk about them, we can. But
we got to live in them too,
yeah,
don't we?
You're going to be there until you're not.
I was a, spitting image, flat bellied athlete.
12-year-old.
Well, sure. And I started drinking beer.
Yeah, at 13.
And stopped skating.
Sure.
I mean, we skated 8 days a week, and then, like our friend Big Walt, Keith Kachuk.
Sure.
Minus the Hall of Fame stuff.
Yeah, I didn't get there.
As soon as I stopped skating, boy, he ballooned up pretty quickly.
You would have thought that who would have thought that physical activity can impact health, but I'll do a whole thing on health at every size, on learning how to have some kind of body neutrality. Of course, I'm very proudly a long-term client of Jesse Nealand, the author of Body Neutral.
Okay.
So that's where I work on my body image stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to Jesse.
You look great.
Appreciate it.
You work out a lot.
Yeah. And I'll never feel like that. So it's a great compliment. Hope somebody can relate. Hope somebody needed to hear that.
I don't mean to out you a little bit on this, but I'm gonna. It's usually when somebody says, no offense, but here it comes, right? You told me, and I think Aubrey had to bring this up because all doctors do this, but it's never good enough, and they always close the appointment off with, why don't you try to lose 5 or 10 pounds?
Sure.
He said that to you one day as you were leaving the office, and it's stuck with you.
Yeah, I've had a couple of those, and I mean, you know, over the course of quite a few years being a therapist, I know quite a few stories of really out of place comments. You know, or if you listen to, like, there's a podcast called Maintenance Phase, and one of the co-hosts is a woman named Aubrey Gordon. You know, she talks a lot about having an ear infection, you know, being in a bigger body. She's somebody that talks about that a lot, and that she's having an ear infection, and the doctor is going to be like, you should lose weight. She's like, worry about my ear. Like, why are we talking about that? But you know, yeah, I mean, I've had a couple of those incidents. I've had a doctor, tell me that the number one rule of, health is that thinner is always better. You know, he was a retina doctor.
Oh, right. Nice.
Yeah. So thank you very much. I don't know if he was talking specifically about my retinas, but I don't think he was.
You told the doctor that you run about 13 miles a day. You burn about 5,000 more calories than you eat daily.
Yeah. I'm in a bit of a deficit, which is also a bit of a problem.
He wants you to lose 5 or 10.
I told the doctor my full workout regimen one time, and he said, right, it's probably a good idea to actually do some of that.
I think you were making it up.
Yeah, like, I don't know how many people have been walking through their detailed 80-20 split with their running, but I guess a lot. Maybe he had been hurt before with people's dishonesty, but
hurt people.
Yeah, but it's
eat less, move more.
I've heard that.
Yeah, I got that advice from my mother.
Yeah, I've heard that one too.
If it were only that easy.
Or if, you know, I mean, if only the first step is, could we have a conversation about your relationship with your body and find a way for you to be somewhat kind and patient and decent to it, and then find out how it likes to move, and when it feels good, and when you feel your best, and when you feel satiated, and when you feel like you want to move and you can build some curiosity, then sure, maybe you end up doing more of that and eating differently. But we usually start with shame,
sure,
and then move to behavior change, and those things as step 1 to step 2 have an incredibly poor track record. Kind of like punishment. Punishment does not have an incredibly good track record with humans. You know, we don't respond super well to punishment.
I know I don't.
No, most people don't. You know, it's and so with things like even talking about health and body image stuff, you know, we tend to go first shame.
Mm-hmm.
Something is wrong about you.
Mm-hmm.
And then we go behavior change. Here's how to fix it. And the thought of moving from like shame to change as 1 to 2 is wild. It's wild. We just don't. It's just not going to happen.
I am going through. God, every time you say something like that, I start reflecting on my parenting.
Shout out to Charlie.
Yeah, it gets me thinking a little bit. And on that note, what did you want to talk about tonight?
I mean, it's not that.
I want to dive into,
you know, it's not that.
I mean, shame-based parenting.
Well, I don't, again, like there is this weird, not so much weird, but using the idea of shame as a concept to lead up to some other stuff I was hoping we could talk about tonight. Shame, as we know, is kind of this classic idea that like guilt is feeling bad about something that maybe you've done, and shame is essentially assuming that this is something that you are, right? That there's something wrong with you, as opposed to being something that maybe you did that wasn't perfect. You know, guilt is another thing where there's a healthy version of guilt. You know, if I have behaved in a way that has legitimately created distance in a relationship or a situation that I really care about, and I say, gosh, I feel really guilty that I've impacted a relationship that matters to me, then that guilt can be helpful, right? But shame, where it's like, you know, something is wrong with me, right? Like not I've done something wrong, but I am something wrong. You know, shame doesn't have nearly the same track record. It doesn't have nearly the same helpful track record. And as soon as a person can really starts to internalize and believe that there is something inherently wrong with them, you know, with the fabric of who they are, then they are going to really just create more personas and masks and performative experiences, because they're not going to feel like they have the space to be authentic. They're going to feel like there's some kind of core thing wrong with them.
Yeah.
And, a thing that I wanted to be able to talk about tonight, I had kind of shorthand said that maybe we should do more discussion on grace. Mostly because, we had gotten into how difficult change is. Then we got into relationship and building kind of your people and spaces. But then we have to get into, well, how do you share who you are in those spaces? Like it might be a little bit out of order in that regard. It could be like the need for change, and then you do the need for how you can have some comfort sharing, and then finding relationship. But I really think that once you kind of tell somebody, oh, you got to build your people, and you got to find out like who supports you and who's your group and who's your, your board of directors, that kind of language. You also have to have a mechanism in place that's like, how are you going to be authentic and vulnerable in those spaces? And that includes a lot of discussion of grace, which we had mentioned Nadia Bowles-Weber. Nadia Bowles-Weber speaks about grace in some ways that I have never heard, that I think is probably like the most profound teachings on it. Modern teachings on it. I'm by no means a theologian, but she speaks a lot about the beauty of understanding that there is this built-in framework of grace, of giving yourself a little bit of wiggle room, understanding that you haven't done anything that no human has never done before.
Yeah.
And that, we should have a conversation about, you and I having a conversation here about, how do you build up authenticity, share some of the darker corners of some of your stories? You are somebody that has way more knowledge and skill with this than I think you're really historically owning, because I know that you are somebody that operates with a lot of radical honesty, that, all jokes aside, is going to say things that have gone on in your life, and would rather face the consequences of saying,
you fucking Dr. Altala.
You'd rather face the consequences of saying something that is a very true and authentic version of your experiences than figuring out how to keep that secret and hidden, which is very corrosive, for the most part.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, you have created a whole world in here that is, how many really raw, difficult peaks and valleys stories can you get out there into the universe that creates more and more opportunities for people to be like, oh shit, I've been through something like that. Or gosh, I've never even told anybody, but I also had A, B, and C, right? Like, so you're cultivating a little bit of expert level knowledge on understanding the role of grace, understanding the role of, we've all done things that we're not particularly happy with, or that we would count as regret. And we have to kind of bring some of those to the light if we want to feel seen in any meaningful way.
It, on the like original or traditional PA podcast, where we bring in those stories, and when people, like, everybody's story is unique, very unique, but there's always somebody out there that will, and this is where I get spiritual about it, because and you said this, I think it might've been the first show when you talked about the right intervention at the wrong time. The timing thing we can't manufacture, but when Becky shares a story about losing her son, and somebody's driving down 64 on a Tuesday and throws the podcast on and hears it, and it impacts their life to the point where I've had this told to me, and not, to where they literally make a pivot and they're heading down one direction of shame or making the same mistake, whether it's self-medicating, and they hear something at the right time. We're doing our part by putting it out in the world. And then we're having some faith that the spiritual part will find somebody at that right time, and boom, when it hits, it can be there's been times to use the title of this, it's all about that. I needed to hear that.
Sure.
And a lot of times you tune out the people that even your own board of directors. So when you hear something that's a new voice, a mother, an ordinary mother that's grieving, a child is doing an extraordinary thing, and hearing that a stranger's story can change change a life.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you saying that. When you talk about grace, my first real experience of grace was just the day I woke up, the day 2 in treatment, and just had people helping and loving a stranger who just by default ended up in detox from a whole lot of mistakes and wrong decisions, or poor decisions, however you want to look at it. But and nobody cared about any of that shit. And then the flip side is when you receive that type of grace. I don't know anybody that's received the type of grace that I'm talking about that does not want to tell people about it, introduce people to it, help them find it.
Sure.
It's one of those things that you just don't want to keep for yourself.
Yeah. Well, and there's something to I had mentioned like one of the silly kind of origin stories for my spiritual background is that when I first read the Tao Te Ching, which is an old spiritual text, and first got introduced to Zen Buddhism and some of the stuff that I got really, really into for a long time. What struck me more than anything, which is this really kind of weirdly simple thing, was I really felt my shoulders drop at the idea of being non-judgmental. And it's, it's not, there's no profundity to that. Mm-hmm. There was just like, I was at a point in my life. I read the Tao, and the Tao Te Ching is the Taotecching. Looks like Tao.
I appreciate you doing that for me.
But yeah, the Tao. And so I read the Tao when I was 19, and a translation of it by a guy named Stephen Mitchell, and I just loved it. And I had no idea why. I don't know what I'm reading, right? Like, I mean, it's poetic, it's verses, if I handed you a copy of the Tao right now in terms of just reading the text, you could read it before we were done here, like it's a collection of verses. But I was so moved by the opportunity to be non-judgmental. I felt that so much of my life depended on not only making a quick judgment, but getting out ahead of other people's judgment. Whether it's self-deprecating humor, whether it's making fun of myself, whether it's trying to say something maybe like a little trash talky and a little bit negative, but doing it as fast as I could. So that way, maybe I'm the quickest person to say something, a little negative in a situation, but that makes you look like we have a tendency to equate a certain amount of cynicism and negativity with a certain amount of realism. We think if you talk to somebody who's a cynic, they might be like, well, actually, I'm more of a realist.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, you've been hurt like the rest of us. You've been disillusioned by something. And you've become judgmental about those things because becoming disillusioned is really, really hurtful. And we have a lot of pain from it. And so I started looking at this term like non-judgmental. It's like, oh my gosh, my life is dominated by the thought that I have to judge things. I have to make a quick judgment. I have to know the thing. I can't make a mistake. I can't be wrong. Other people who are wrong, I need to be ready to say that they're wrong so that I can get ahead of them in my own commentary.
It sounds like a heavy lift.
Yeah. And it's like, gosh, wait, like non-judgmental, nothing. We don't have to call something right. We don't have to call something wrong. We can just say that it is. There's no pressure to be an expert. There's a line in the Tao that is pretty famous where Lao Tzu, the author, says that those who say don't know and those who know don't say. And it was
I've heard variations of that.
And it's just like a relief where it's like, wait, yeah, if I don't have to be out here saying things, getting things right, making judgments, being correct, and knowing that if I could offer my own non-judgmental space, this was me reading at 19, thinking like, well, I need to back off of some judgments, but maybe I'd give myself a little grace. Maybe I wouldn't have to get out ahead of what I think people are going to be thinking.
Right. Well, I mean, and that goes. And maybe I'm being cynical about it, but I there was a guy in me and my father's life that we knew, and my father, my old man, would joke around. He'd say, "Hey, yeah, you know Timmy," and it's not his name, so I'm making the name up because I don't want any connections. He said, he's real successful. You don't want to know how successful, just ask him.
Sure.
So like when you said that, like the people that know don't.
Yeah.
They're usually, and it, you could go down a whole rabbit hole of wisdom. People, you seek the loudest is not the wisest.
Sure.
The loudest takes up a lot of space. I've been the fucking loudest.
Sure. Yeah, we're doing a podcast.
Sure. Right.
Yeah.
Takes up a lot of space, but it doesn't mean there's not an equation to wisdom.
Yeah, it's just the whole idea of building out the experience of grace. I know that you're not somebody that works a 12-step program. I'm not in recovery, as I've said, but I really have a lot of respect for the 12 steps as a change model. Like it's just a good model, right? When you look at this list of like, okay, let's work through these things. You could really take anything that you want to change and run it through the 12 steps as a change model. It just kind of holds up in a really cool way.
I got humbled on that, the 12 steps, because, I've shared the story. I got pissy with a couple old timers in AA, and
I believe this.
Yeah, unfortunately, let me, and I don't advise it. Seek a alternative program by building tools in the team. And I always carried the AA printout meetings, which if you print out all the AA meetings in your zip code, it's, back in the day, you'd print it and there'd be 10 plus pages.
Sure.
Because there's a lot.
Sure.
There's 800 a week in the St. Louis area, and that's just over in St. Louis. So I did, here I'm using it. But then reflecting back and going through outpatient, I tried to be, I credit a lot of my quote unquote success in being able to stay sober and find my smile, because whether I knew it or not, I was doing the steps.
Yeah.
Somebody just had to, we're going to outsmart the know-it-all here. And so I do credit them.
Sure.
But I love how you said that. I mean, because it applies, it wasn't that I just stopped drinking, but I changed a fuckload of behaviors.
Yeah.
For the better because of those.
Yeah.
The principles behind those steps.
One of my favorite things I ever had explained to me about the steps was that the primary reason for making amends, for working through where you're going to go and you're going to make amends in situations where you're not going to do damage to the person that you're making amends with just by existing, right? Like, I mean, there's clearly some damage that maybe has been done that you can't just go to somebody and be like, I'm here to say I'm sorry, because they're going to have a panic attack seeing you. But that the primary reason behind that step was so that a person who was trying to get sober, or a person who was working the steps, could get exposed to a significant amount of grace and forgiveness. That chances are, when you go through this list, this fearless inventory, and you go through this list of things that you end up wanting to make amends for, that the things that you can go make amends for, the things that you say, like, I can reasonably go and say, here's a mistake that I made and I really want to apologize. For the most part, the answer that you're going to get is forgiveness. Like, I'd use a silly example. In my old house, and you know the story. In my old house, we had there was a stone Buddha in the front yard. And
I was pretty drunk.
Anybody that knows me knows I like my tchotchkes. There's a lot of Buddhas, a lot of statues.
The house I showed up at the wrong house first.
Yeah. So had this little Buddha in the yard. and one day it was gone.
Oh,
yeah, it was gone. And anybody that knows anything about Buddhism is probably right now is already making a joke about how I probably should not have been very attached to the statue. I've heard it, but if you thought it, good on you. So the statue's gone. Okay. Nothing I can do about it, right? You don't file a police report over like a $65 Gringo Jones Buddha statue. And so I just went on my life without that statue. And fast forward every bit of 5 or 6 years, and my doorbell rings, and there's a total stranger at my front door holding that statue.
No shit.
And I used to live down the street from a bar, and he said to me, he goes, you know, I used to drink a lot, and I don't drink anymore, and I don't live in the area. But when I used to drink, one night I stole this statue out of your yard, and I wanted to bring it back to you. And I didn't say anything other than, you know, man, I really appreciate you. And if you want, you can keep it. You know, it's yours if you'd like it. And I'm sure he was like, take this hunk of stone that reminds me of my suffering away from me. But
I mean, but walking home drunk from Shotzi's is
all in this.
Yeah.
And I just thought, like, you know, I don't know anything further than that. I have no idea. I'm assuming that there was maybe some program being worked there. But I think about that when I think about grace. That's one of my favorite stories. It's like, yes, a person who is really beating the hell out of themselves, a person who really thinks that their particular story is so fit for darkness that they don't want to say it. And the opportunity to just very simply be like, man, I appreciate you. Yeah, I'm glad things are doing better. And just reflect back that idea of not only do we all make mistakes, but we all do a lot of things in maybe in an imperfect way that we deserve to have an opportunity to have somebody say like, hey, man, that might have been a weird moment for you, but it doesn't tell me anything about who you are. It's not who you are. And I love that explanation of making amends, that it's just like, the thought is, if somebody comes to me and says, you know, Chaz, when I was really out there bad and having a hard time, this one time I took $100 out of your wallet and I feel terrible about it. I can't believe I was stealing money from my friends. That for me to have the opportunity to say, water under the bridge, man, I don't need that $100. I'm just glad you're getting right. I'm glad you're feeling better. I hope you haven't been carrying something on your heart where you thought that all you were to me was $100 lost. You know, and I just think that's a beautiful thing about the 12 steps and about working a program, is that idea of having like built-in opportunities for forgiveness.
Not to make this about me, but there's another one of those, no offense, but I'm going to make it. I've been banned for life from Shotzi's twice.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
New owners.
Well,
I don't know if it's new owners. I actually don't know that.
I think it is, but this was definitely they're same open. Owners.
Yeah.
So in theory, they extended a lot of grace to allow me back after the first lifetime ban to receive the second.
Grace doesn't always work perfect.
Sure.
Peter said he didn't know Jesus 3 times.
Right, there you go.
So
that's funny. Screech was there for both lifetime bans. Which you're probably not surprised, but
he dodged the.
Yep. Yeah.
He dodged the ban.
Yeah.
He was just more digestible than you.
Well, I think they might have slapped one on him, but I don't know if he got both of them. But I do appreciate they have great cheeseburgers and the peel and eat shrimps. And I love that they reopened. So good for Shotzi.
One time, the only time I've ever been in that place, weirdly ties into my career, and only reason I would tell this story is because the guy that I'm going to tell it about, I just love, and I if I could tell him to listen to this, I would, but I haven't heard from him in a while.
Do I know him?
No, you don't. The assistant director at the prison that I worked at, was a guy named Bruce.
All right,
and I believe he's still there, and he was in a band for a long time called the Bronx Zoo. They toured around. He had a cup of coffee touring, as far as I know. But either way, Bruce is like a world-class musician. He's a wonderful musician. And when I first started working at the prison, Bruce was like the one person on the planet I wanted to like me. I loved Bruce. He interviewed me, he hired me.
What was his profession?
So he was drug and alcohol counselor.
Okay. So he's a clinician type.
Yeah. He was. I
don't know if it's a warden. I don't know if it's a CO.
He had worked as a counselor, and then he moved up into leadership in the program there. And Bruce probably still does like DUI classes around here and stuff like that. He's around. I just haven't had a chance to talk to him.
I'll be damned if this finds his way.
I just love Bruce so much. And he played at Shotzi's one night when I'd probably been working at the prison for a month, and I'm like, well, I got to go to Bruce's show because Bruce is my guy, and so that's the only time I've ever actually been in Shotzi's, was because I was really hoping to be friends with Bruce.
It's not a large square footage.
No,
joint.
No, yeah, the acoustics were interesting.
Sure,
yeah, it was loud.
A lot of karaoke nights at Shotzi's.
Yeah,
and across the street, there used to be a Hardee's. You remember when that was?
My grandpa worked at that.
And it was a great Hardee's, and then it's pretty much been a vacant building for
it's just been a lot
20 years.
Then. That is one of those. My grandpa is fits a bit of a generational stereotype as just the hardest working guy in the room.
Sure.
And when he retired from delivering milk, he took the job. He took a job as the morning maintenance guy at Hardee's. He worked at like 4:30 a.m. to 11, like 5 days a week as a retiree, cleaning up a Hardee's.
Was he married?
Yeah.
They get along?
Grandma. Grandma was the sweetest people. Yeah, grandma was home, and
get back out of the house.
I know if I was at Grandma and Grandpa's, when he got off work, he'd come home with biscuits or something like that. Like
Hardee's good eating.
Yeah. But yeah, that place is gone. He was there for a long time.
Yeah, I thinking about the amends, like you're not going to bat 1,000 with your amends list, but there's some things that it does. It allows you, it puts you front center in that experience with grace, and if you've never experienced it, it's life changing.
Yeah.
And forgiveness. There was I think it was probably one of the pastors, and I'm sure they didn't coin it, probably said a lot, that grace is like undeserved forgiveness, and mercy is, how do they say it? It was super wise. It's mercy is basically giving a pass, an undeserved pass in a way, and they said it fucking poetically. I wish I'm not as articulate as you, but to receive that, and to go through those exercises, if you haven't been to a level of humility, they get really, and I think once you get to that spot, then you're really able to forgive yourself.
Oh, sure.
and give mercy to yourself.
Well, and it goes to some of what we were talking about last week, where we never like stop needing it, right? Like we never say like, okay, cool, I've experienced what it is like to be forgiven in any capacity, and so I don't think I'm ever going to need that again.
I got humbled once. I'm going to go back to
should be good.
Done with the humility thing.
And I think that is one of the really tough things to buy in about in your own life sometimes, is that you might experience some forgiveness, you might experience some grace, and then you start realizing that there's some kind of limitations where you're going to have to figure out how to forgive yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean forgive yourself for the 10 out of 10 thing that you're beating yourself up for. I mean, also just like the day-to-day things, right? Like if you're, if you lose something, or you lose your car keys, or, you forget something, or you make a mistake, and you're somebody that immediately moves to kind of criticism, to kind of browbeating, rather than being somebody that has the ability to hold yourself accountable, but still be very graceful with yourself. And you learn that for a lot of us, especially if shame is kind of the core wound for somebody, you learn that cracking of the whip internally so early. So you don't have any wiggle room, right? Like I always thought when I think about grace, the image that kind of comes to mind is I think about like having just like a little bit of wiggle room, right? Like having a little bit of grace. I could hit the sides a bit and it's not going to hurt anything, you know,
Sure.
Like having some bumpers and providing a little bit of that support. And there's a recording of it out there on YouTube somewhere, but it is somebody reading the transcript of a speech given by Carl Jung, to introduce Jung a little bit, because I've mentioned him on here before. Carl Jung was a Swiss psychiatrist who was a contemporary of Freud's, and has his own, you know, theories of depth psychology, and Jungian theory informs a lot of what I do as a therapist. But Jung was speaking to a church at one point, and Jung was a multiple generations in his family were pastors, and so he came from a very religious background. He has most of his theory was rooted in a lot of spirituality, a lot of mythology, the archetypes, collective unconscious stuff that nobody's probably dying to hear right now. But Jung is talking to this church, and one of the things that Jung's talking about was a kind of core aspect of his theory, which is you have to find a way to be graceful and willing to accept every facet of your experience, of what you identify as yourself. And even saying in there, speaking to clergy, speaking to people that work in the spiritual and the religious fields, he was even saying like a person who is there to be supportive of others, but still struggles to be accepting of parts of themselves, is eventually going to project those parts of themselves onto other people, right? Like if you can't accept yourself as a whole entity, as a whole human, you probably will not be able to do it for other people, was kind of part of his theory. And when you get into this recording, it ends in, I think, like a really moving way, where he's talking about what maybe I would refer to now as a form of self-compassion. But he says, what if of all the thieves and robbers and criminals and harmful individuals and harmful acts and all these things, what if the person that deserved my forgiveness the most this whole time was me? And it's not a direct quote, but he just ties that in with this basic, this really moving language of, what if I'm doing all of this forgiving and all of this grace giving, and it turns out the person that I needed it from the most was just me? I needed, the worst parts of me needed some forgiveness and needed some grace. The parts that I'm hiding need some forgiveness and grace. Jung called anything that we disown about ourselves and our experience our shadow.
Okay. Well, I'm thinking of the like pit in my stomach that I get if I do something that I know, like if it's rare, but if I'm in the wrong,
sure,
with Ashley, and I know it,
quarterly at best,
right? Well, it happened recently. Damn, I did something. It's so rare I can't remember what it was.
Or we're having a hard time narrowing it down.
Sure. I think that's probably it. In fact, it was yesterday. But she forgave me. But you feel really bad. And then as you were saying that, I was trying to say, I'm going to let myself off the hook here, Ash. And you can feel the knife kind of come out of your stomach.
Yeah.
I kid, but there's been times in my life where I've been really, and it probably goes back to active addiction. We've talked about the good old Brett Baltz before, but I swung on his old man was one of my last hurrahs before going to treatment. Well, woke up, and I think that was tired of waking up that way. I was tired of waking up doing an apology tour.
Sure.
And part of that was the only way that I can stop this knife in my gut and really forgive myself is by asking for help. I can't do this on my own, and making sure that the only thing I can control is to not drink anymore, because it was the common denominator. It's not who I was as a human, was to attack Kevin fucking Baltz.
Sure.
You know, and as you were saying that, like, to forgive yourself, I knew that they had forgiven me as soon as I checked into rehab. They were like you were with this guy in the statue, but I wasn't there yet. I had to kind of go through it and get to the amends point. But I can remember that knot in my stomach of shame and loosening, and then free. It's liberating, and then it was gone. It was that stomach ache, that acute pain in my gut. My soul was gone once I was able to forgive myself. They had done this long before, and as you were saying, that's what I was.
The process of developing that self-compassion, that ability to, you kind of read my mind in using a really common term there, which is when we all use the term letting somebody off the hook.
Yeah.
And you think about like what the metaphor is there, right? Like it's a hook. Right, like it's in you, right?
And I think like in a fish's face.
Like the thought of just like you're walking around with a hook in you, like with something that is not only a pain point, but it is severely limiting your motion, your movement, what you're available for. And when we think about kind of like letting off the hook, right? Like there's two parts. Like one thing is, can the hook be removed? And the second thing is how long does it take for the wound to heal? And that is, that's the longer process.
Because they let me off the hook the day that they're like, oh, finally.
Yeah.
He's it. And they both would have signed up for it. And you would have signed, let me be the last swing if that means him checking in.
Sure.
Very grateful for the tribe, right? But for my people. And there's people out there that I'd say that about today, that punching bag me, please let me be your rock bottom.
Sure.
I'm here for it.
Sure.
And then I will fucking drive you to treatment. The reason I'm looking at my phone is trying to find that quote. Because I thought I took a picture of the screen. So I did a little search of the words mercy and grace. So I'm gonna find the quote, and I'm gonna just tell people next week.
Such a nice spiritual moment if when you searched mercy and grace in your phone, like a bunch of beautiful conversations came up, or that would have been it would have been
two waitresses at PT's.
It would have been a nice moment of like, well, I did find this conversation with Ashley about, grace, and it was, here's what she said. And then we quote Ashley, and it's a beautiful moment. I will say, I mean, Ashley's a great example of, your guys' marriage is a great example of this idea of grace, where Ashley is a very powerful presence. Like she's a very powerful. She embodies a term that I heard Robert Niemeyer use one time recently about quiet leadership.
Sure,
and the primary way that she does that, and I think this is like something that is in my world of therapy. This is something that all of us really strive for and care about. Is you don't have an interaction with Ashley where you think that there's not grace included.
Yeah,
and that is when I go back to the idea of being non-judgmental, I go back to the idea of that kind of stance, right? Like one of the things that I am most proud of, but also work very diligently at, is making sure that my opportunities to be non-judgmental are very authentic. That I'm not someone that has any interest in validation in the name of staying positive, right? Like I am somebody that I'm not going to validate something that isn't truly authentic, right? Like if I'm really moved by the moment but not judgmental of it, that's something that is really meaningful for me. And I know that Ashley is a great example of that, as somebody who is just, when you talk to Ashley, you do not feel that you are very eligible for her judgment. And that is something that is a profound experience, and that I think everybody feels it with Ashley. And everybody does that differently. Everybody who has a very kind of graceful presence does that differently. You
saying I should take a few notes, especially when it comes to the way she loads the dishwasher?
It wouldn't have been a bad idea for me to write this out first and you read it,
sure.
But I'm going off the cuff with it. So everybody does different. I mean, there's 6 therapists, 6 of us at LightSource total, myself included. And we are all very, very similar in our kind of dedication to therapy and very, very different in our approach.
Yeah.
But the primary thing that we share that makes us all kind of a series of concentric circles is we all really believe in the long-term impact of having a safe, non-judgmental space to talk about what it feels like to be you. And that is something that, Jessica and I we started the practice together.
Shout out to Jessica and LightSource. Just recently have helped a dear friend of mine who listens to this podcast and doesn't live in the St. Louis area, and was asking if there was some help even virtually, because she's so moved by the LightSource and who you guys are, and so big shout out to
I appreciate that,
to Jessica.
Some mornings need more than motivation. They need a solid cup of coffee. Light in the Dark is the Pondoff's Anonymous Dark Roast, created with our friends at Long Story Coffee. Bold, smooth, and built for the days when you just need something steady. Every bag helps support the conversations and community behind the show. Order online for delivery, shipping, or local pickup at pondoffsanonymous.com/coffee. Light in the Dark Coffee. A little light, even on heavy days.
I know she's like a sister to you, and that's kind of how you run your business.
Yeah, I mean,
it's kind of a joke. I mean, it's even kind of a, no offense,
here we go,
mockery, but here we go. To say the word business.
Sure, yeah.
Kind of a weird.
It's a little bit of a co-op.
Right. You don't really believe. You have a very odd relationship with money.
Yeah, I just don't like it.
God bless you.
I just don't. It's just not of an interest.
I envy that. How do I get that? I need that.
Well, I mean, it's not. We operate in a world where you have to have it, so it's not like any of us have seen our way off the grid. But to stay reasonably on topic with it, money is a great example, right? Like money being its own kind of hungry ghost, where if you make,
I know that term,
if you make X amount of money in a year, and it's a really great year, and then you make X minus 4% the next year, you've failed. Right? Like that is how
you lose a job.
That is how like arbitrary the lines of our self-worth can be, right? Like the amount of time that we spend deciding that our worth has taken a hit versus the amount of time that we spend working on accepting that we are a worthy individual no matter what is a very lopsided thing. And it's, I mean, I say that I strive, I work really, really hard and deeply want to be a good therapist, but I don't think I'll ever be a particularly good businessman.
Can you do both?
And so it's tough, but at the same time, when I think about getting to work at LightSource, where we're all at LightSource, that's just what we're doing. We're doing therapy in that building, and we're not doing more than that. We're not trying to expand into a different market. We're not trying to, which it's not that those things are inherently bad. It's just not what we do, right? We are 6 people that
I want to
really believe in this.
Bring in some more revenue.
Yeah. And even something, I mean, we mentioned Jessica, at LightSource, it's Jessica, Kayla, Rachel, Haley, Holly, and myself. And everyone there has this very, very strong skill, this almost innate skill to be able to convey that they're here for people for the long haul, to be present and give people a space to process. Right. And that is something that we all believe in, right? That's something that is like overlapping with us. That's not every therapist. And that's not a knock on other therapists.
Sure.
It is that, there's also like really, really important short-term therapy. There's really, really important cognitive and structured therapy, DBT, CBT, EMDR, right? Like models of therapy that are meant to provide some impact where speed and structure and protocol is significant. We all do some version of that, but where it's kind of interesting that we have all come together as like a small group practice is that a primary through line, the thread that you could pull that pulls through all of us, is that we all believe in the relationship being something that is central and it doesn't have to be fast moving, that the work that people do on themselves, we're working on ourselves our whole lives. You don't have to be in therapy your whole life, right? Like, I mean, that's not, you could stop and start, you can come and go, or you could work in therapy for as long as you want to work in therapy.
Yeah.
But the space of therapy and specifically where I can speak to the people that I'm with every day, therapists that I'm with every day, the space is something that we really, really commit to. This is here when you need it. Right? Like, as soon as, if you've seen me for therapy one time, I want to be your therapist.
And then the boundaries are intact.
Yeah. Those are important.
I have to stop referring some of my friends to you because I like to get together with everybody.
I don't know what you're talking about.
And once it's like, once that they walk into Light Source, you don't confirm or deny or nothing. It's like, it's amazing stuff.
I have no idea.
Your wife and Ashley all have these clinical boundaries that are impenetrable, I think is the word.
The best part about boundary, I mean, like having like decent boundaries and not so much just like the strictness of it, or, I mean, of course, like confidentiality and everything is deeply ingrained and significant to all of us. But any relationship that's going to function has to start with some awareness of where it starts and where it ends, right? What are the limits of the relationship? And relationships that have no boundaries, right, we all know are not great, right? Like, we know that a relationship where somebody can just, say whatever they want and do whatever they want, and somebody is maybe going to be a bit of a doormat about it or something like that has a limitation to it. It's not bad. I mean, I don't
tell that to the Oval Office.
It's not inherently awful because, like, I kind of, I will frequently refer to myself as a doormat, right? Like, I am well aware that, like, it's if I'm the place where you clean off your shoes, it is what it is. Like, I know that.
I think Charlie, you were number 3 on Charlie's invite to 2K
it's
last
Olympics.
night.
It's Olympic season, and that was not my best bronze medal.
I found not the Mercy Grace quote, but I then thought of another quote when we were talking about Ashley and her profoundness and her dishwashing and loading skills. This was in August of 25. I said in our group chat, it's me, you, and our wives. I have 2 fantasy drafts tonight. Studying. I must have had 2 drafts that night. Wrong text. I'm watching Ashley do something. This Ashley, man, she's motherfucking Mary and or Mother Teresa reincarnated. I am so lucky.
Yeah.
To be responded by your wife, Holly. Remember that the next time you're yelling at her about the dishwasher.
Holly stays in the chat.
She sure does.
Stays in the chat.
And she's fiercely defensive of Ashley.
Holly, a great example. Holly's version of kind of her non-judgmental stance and the way that she conveys a lot of like people's being worthy of grace is she's a fierce advocate.
Amen.
She
was a fierce advocate of me today to myself.
Yeah. I mean, she's on your side until you can be.
Sure. I was shitting on myself in the chat today and she wasn't having it.
Yeah.
God bless her.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, and it's something that I mean, I'm stating an awful lot of bias here because we're talking about therapy, and I just have such a deep belief in therapy. I don't want anybody to think that the only way to heal is therapy, right? Like, I think that it can be a very important piece of the puzzle, but it's not the direction that everybody is going to go. But when I think about,
wish they would,
I agree holistically. I mean, I think it's something that is a great piece of the puzzle.
It's such a parallel to my two lives. My where I really needed a lot of therapy for some of the shit I went through as a kid. We all probably do, but there was one time when my mom got me an appointment. I was 17, liquored up, pissed off, and all the guy wanted to do was talk about my deep trauma, and I pretty much told him fuck off and left. Went back to Fridays. Yeah, you know what, an asshole.
Yeah,
trying to get it. Yeah. And then it probably wasn't until treatment. I mean, until I realized it was a social worker in detox that worked for the treatment, so a clinician, and then part of outpatient is seeing an individual therapist once a week, and she was a younger gal, probably just finishing up with school, but just the ability to provide space and felt protected as far as confidentiality. And it was like on my worst day, I got to just fucking unload and get shit off of my chest on my worst appointment day, like that I maybe left thinking nothing happened, but something did happen.
Yeah.
And now I, just like anything else I've learned the hard way in my life, now I preach it. You need to all my friends, you need it.
Sure.
And real quick, I've told you about Charlie losing a teacher recently that he'll remember for the rest of his life.
Jamie Devlin.
Amen. The person that I had that did that to me when I was in third grade was the school counselor. So the clinician, the therapist for the elementary school. And here it took me 20 more years. I guess I was 10 to really dive in, but
we get there when we get
there. A whole lot of whiskey in between. So I'm a huge advocate of it. One of the things you text me when we were kind of shooting the shit about what to get in tonight, and I want to make sure that you have some time here to talk about this because I have questions, is the difference between authentic validation and things that feel like, did you say enabling?
Sure. Well, the part of why I brought that up was because there one of the critiques of something like therapy a lot of times is that, like, they'll say, well, therapy is just a validation machine. And this discussion that, like, oh, that's what it is that you go to therapy and the therapist is just going to kind of validate you.
Yeah, your mom did suck.
Yeah. They're gonna just kind of gas you up, and then you're going to go out into the world being told that you've never made a mistake, and that it's going to kind of enable a lot of bad behavior. I can say that something that comes up relatively frequently when all of us at Light Source sit down and talk, because when we hang out in clinical supervision that I do, and I'm working with new therapists, therapists are very worried about, well, I don't want to do that, right? Because they've heard from outside that that this idea of, like, well, what if I am supporting something and it's really not good? What if I'm a supportive presence for somebody and it's not particularly good behavior? But it's interesting to me because the line there is, how authentically present is the person who is listening, right? Like, if the therapist is being authentic, is hearing, is really present with another person, and they are able to make sense of the story that is unfolding in front of them, the likelihood that leads to just kind of a basic rubber stamp enabling is kind of nil. And I think that a lot of where that comes from, that fear comes from, is a lot of people carry so much shame that we kind of collectively are worried that we're going to be validated to the point that we're going to start kind of being fearful that we're going to lose something. That, like, what if I'm being told I'm right, and then I'm going to find out that I've been wrong this whole time, and I'm going to be embarrassed. And so like, we don't love this idea of validation, but
as human beings.
Yeah. I mean, I just think it's kind of a big thing because I know that the worry about something that comes up a lot, if you think about therapy, especially with like, family members are going to talk where they're going to be like, well, what are you telling your therapist? You need to be telling your therapist this. And I bet your therapist just tells you that what you're doing is okay, but it's not,
Oh, I hear it all the time.
Yeah. And we hear that, and again, all of us that are in the field are like, oh gosh, I hope I'm not doing that. I hope I'm not doing that, because admittedly the therapists that I know, and I know a lot of therapists and I've been in the game a long time, and all we're trying to do is be the best for people. We're working hard because it's an abstract job, and being a human is hard. So we really want to be there for people. And so you'll hear that, well, you need to be talking to your therapist about this. So I bet your therapist told you that this was okay and it's not okay. And the line there is that there's a little bit of an assumption that if a person is going into therapy and they're being significantly validated in a way that maybe borders on kind of enabling, or the worry is that it would be kind of enabling and the therapist doesn't have the whole picture, what's missing there is you forget that a major step of being in therapy is the authenticity of the relationship, right? Like enabling in a lot of ways is only going to be present if there isn't a particularly deep relationship. And if there's not a particularly deep or safe relationship, that's going to be the work of therapy until there is.
Sure.
And
that could be a year.
Oh my gosh.
Of weekly sessions.
Yeah, absolutely.
I hear it's usually moms and dads with a child that they go talk to your therapist, and then there's the stereotype, well, now daughter hates me because she's all she does is go in and bitch about, and that's where that I think kind of bullshit narrative comes from, because what they parents, and I understand this, I want Charlie to go to his therapist and him to come out fixed, like it's that I want my kid sad. I want him to go see this therapist. I want him to come out happy.
Yeah.
I'm going to spit him in. I'm going to send him. I'm going to put him on the fucking feed him into you sad, and you better spit him back out happy in an hour.
We should never criticize any human impulse that is pointed in the direction of reducing suffering. And so when somebody is like, well, my kid is depressed and they're going to therapy and they're not getting any better, it's like, we should never criticize the person who is saying, I wish this would move faster.
Sure.
Because it's like, yeah, of course, like this person also wants the suffering to reduce. Right. They, like everybody's on the same team.
I can't handle it when the kid's disappointed.
Yeah. Like everybody wants the suffering. So even when an outside force is present there, or there's this push, or there's this, what are you really talking about in there? Or is this, did you even tell your therapist this? I bet you didn't talk about this. And sometimes it's like,
fucking Carmela Soprano used to bitch at Tony all the time about this.
Like it's an hour, you get done what you can get done. But it sometimes lacks the compassion and grace that we're talking about, where for everybody involved, right? Like whenever we start thinking that what we need to kind of like speed up our emotional experience, some of that is going to be rooted in suffering, right? None of us want to suffer longer.
No.
Right?
Yeah, right.
And some
There's
of it,
not a line out the door signing up for that.
Some of it is going to be rooted in our just kind of innate fear that eventually we have run out of time that is going to be given to us to have a hard time. Right? Like we get worried about that. We get worried about the thought that there's going to be, that the meter's running, right? That somebody is going to say, I can't help you anymore. And that makes you officially a hopeless cause. And we don't want to be that. So we kind of get bristly and critical. And one of the bigger influences on my career is a guy named Carl Rogers. Both of the Rogers are my guys. Fred, Mr. Rogers, and Carl Rogers.
I like that Jimmy Rogers.
Well,
hell of a hockey player.
Yeah. I didn't stand a chance against Jimmy Rogers.
Oh God, he had a quick release, didn't he?
So fast. So with Carl Rogers, Carl Rogers developed a person-centered humanistic therapy. He's out of Chicago, and Carl Rogers talked a lot about how in therapy there's there's three major components of effective therapy. He was a big proponent of active listening. And one of the interesting things about Carl Rogers, you can watch videos of Carl Rogers doing therapy back in the day, and everybody's like smoking a cigarette in the office.
I feel if that was ever okay, you'd have the pipe out like a
I wouldn't mind. It's like now
like that pipe in Table Rock with the old man.
Yeah, I mean, anytime I can spend some quality time with Dad, and so Carl Rogers had, he would start with this active listening, and active listening at its core seems like you're essentially just repeating back what the person just said to you, and that's not wrong. Right there, you can watch Carl Rogers do therapy, and it's almost amazing how simple it is when somebody says, "Gosh, I don't know, I just feel like I haven't been myself ever since the divorce." And then Carl Rogers is kind of sitting there quietly for a second, and he goes, "So, you just really don't feel like you've been yourself since the divorce?" And a person's like, "Yes, absolutely. I mean, yes." And
nailed it.
Yeah, the way that he just rings that bell, right? This tuning fork of active listening where there's nothing fancy there, but active listening has one primary component of active listening is if I'm repeating back what I just heard, we're not done here until you completely feel like I understand what you just said. And so that kind of summary, that repeating back where it's like, okay, this person is listening to me. This person is listening to me. And I don't
keep going back to Ashley. Shit, 60 seconds, and then she better get in. You get that point across, otherwise I start drifting.
I don't believe in anything as much as I believe in listening.
Yeah,
I just it's the most important behavioral commitment you can make to somebody is give them your attention.
It's powerful too to be on the receiving end of that.
Yeah, and uncomfortable, right?
But there's also times like you said, and I go back to it because it's so wise that the right intervention at the wrong time is the
wrong intervention.
Sometimes they just I want to call. I just need a fucking listener.
Yeah,
I hear that a lot. I think and we do kind of get that right. I think in our community, like sometimes I just need a listener. Right? I don't solve it because your knee jerk is she comes to me with a problem. How do I fix it? How do I fix it? Same thing with Charlie. I don't want you disappointed. I don't want you suffering. I want to fix it right now so you're back to happy, and then all right in the world.
Well, it's something that comes from the grief world that I believe I'm taking from Francis Weller, but I might be taking from Frank Ostaseski. Is that like grief work, which is any kind of emotional work really you can apply this to, which is why I bring it up here. For the work to be done, there needs to be a container and there needs to be release, and you can't do both for yourself. So when you say sometimes you just need a listener, right? Like sometimes you just need to unload, right? Like that's perfect. That's exactly what we're talking about. You have to have some kind of release, right? Like you have to have some kind of emotional release, or catharsis is a term that you might hear every now and then, like some kind of emotional release. To do that, you need a container. The container is the listener, right?
Yeah,
and you can't do both, right? Like we need a container, and and we can't provide both of those things for ourselves. And so I think that's what you're describing there. And that's what a lot of active listening does, is active listening starts creating this container. You might be telling a story and somebody starts to repeat it back to you strictly to make sure they understand. Right? Like to absolutely make sure that they understand. And the experience of being understood and being seen without maybe having to overly work at it. Right? You're not trying to wow me with the story, right? You're not trying to see if I'm interested. So many times we're very worried that our stories aren't going to be interesting enough. And that's a form of not giving yourself any grace, right? That's the assumption that you needing to spend a few minutes talking about a tough phone call that you had at work, the thought that that's not interesting enough. And it's like, no, it is, right? Sure. If you give yourself some grace, the fact that it matters to you means it matters, right? Like that's what we're looking for. And so like that active listening was the first kind of post in Rogers' work. The second thing, And this is something that I know a lot of us, when you go through grad school and you learn how to be a social worker, learn how to be a therapist, you're learning a lot of theory, and it's very heady. You might learn Freudian stuff and Jungian stuff and different cognitive stuff. The first thing that you really fall in love with when you learn how to be a therapist is that Carl Jung talked about unconditional positive regard. And for a lot of us in social work school, where we're learning all this stuff, we're learning systems theory, we're learning all kinds of stuff, all we really want to do is have the opportunity to be really kind to somebody.
Yeah.
Right? And so we're chomping at the bit.
Kind of feels good, too.
Like, when do I get to just go be nice? And then you learn, like, Freud, and you're like, this does not sound nice. I don't know how to make this particularly nice. And then you learn Rogers, and Rogerian theory says unconditional positive regard. And so what unconditional positive regard is basically, first and foremost, it's what you would hope to get from a parent. All right, so this is where it fits into therapy. It fits into early childhood. It fits into developmental trauma. Is you would hope that you receive unconditional positive regard from a parent. But of course, if you didn't, you might end up in something like therapy, where you're now hopefully receiving unconditional positive regard from a therapist. What is really important here, and this even comes up because sometimes people have a positive enough experience in therapy that they start to get suspicious. They start to think like, this person might really just always tell me that I'm okay and I'm right, or I'm, you start to, so that
blowing smoke up my
that worry starts to creep in. And so what happens is,
you had that from a couple hockey coaches, right?
For sure. Yeah. And so what unconditional positive regard is not this rubber stamp validation, right? It's not this, don't worry, anything you tell me is correct and right, and you're great and you're golden. What unconditional positive regard is it is the idea that anything you tell me about your experience, you can't change my regard for you. So you can tell me something that I don't love, right? You can tell me some story of damaging, hurtful behavior, and I can absolutely be somebody that's like, that is not great. That is not 10 out of 10 optimized behavior. But in the moment, you're going to feel that you didn't lose my regard for you.
So let me ask you this. This is mesmerizing. Like, that's how we, Ashley and I, speak for both of us, feel about Charlie, but I don't. Certainly, no, I don't. It articulated well. Like, I need him to know that. How do I say that to him?
Well, you're not as bad as you think at repair.
Okay.
And so, real good at rupture.
I get
not as bad as you think
at
repair.
Your wife assigns me quite a few repairs daily.
Sure. Well, it's not like you've started to move that needle the other direction in terms of the percentage, but I mean, it is. To be a little like overly spiritual about it, right? Some of it is affective, meaning like some of it is just like intuition, attunement, and feeling based, right? Like, let's assume that Charlie is not having a particularly tough time thinking that his parents love him.
Okay. Yeah. I think.
Yeah. And that's the unconditional positive regard, is that Charlie is not thinking there's behaviors that I could do day to day that could lessen the amount of love I have from the people around me.
Got it.
And that's what really matters, is it's not unconditional positive regard is not this constant, every single thing that you do, you're going to be told you're right. Right? Unconditional positive regard is the confidence that even when you share a really difficult story about yourself, even when you say something that maybe you don't want to say, that when you're talking to me, let's say as a therapist, you can't lose my regard for you.
This is that teacher to Charlie that died.
Sure.
That's him. He held Charlie accountable in the best ways.
Yeah. And because accountability
that I even learned from, I get a lot to learn from that.
Accountability is hard.
Sure.
Right? Like, accountability is hard. Like, let's just move on and not worry about this and hope that this goes away has such a draw to it. Right? Yeah. Like, especially if we are thinking that the way that we just behaved is going to define who we are, And I would say like the last part of Rogerian theory, not the last part, but in this kind of like trio of ideas, right? You have the active listening. Active listening is really just making sure that a person who is talking feels understood, right? The second thing is unconditional positive regard. The third thing that Rogers said that had to happen was authenticity. And
all right, I got that. I think I got that.
And that is something that, you know, it is a
One
brilliantly simple, you'd be surprised. It's a brilliantly simple bow to tie on things, right? Because nobody really thinks that they're being particularly inauthentic, right? Like,
sure.
But a lot of people worry that they don't know what an authentic version of themselves is. And even in therapy, right? Like a therapist is basically being tasked in this list of items with, okay, you're going to do the active listening. Well, a therapist can do that, right? Like we should be able to do that. You're going to do the unconditional positive regard. A therapist can probably do that, right? Where Rogers really holds the field or anybody who is trying to take on a listening role to task is Rogers says, don't you dare say something you don't mean. Right? Like, because that is where the suspicion comes in, right? Like, does this person really agree, or does this therapist really, would they tell me if I was doing something wrong? Would they tell me if I was acting out of pocket? And it's like what matters there is the relationship.
A friend of mine says he just wishes you just tell him what to do.
Well, and the question is, right, do you think the person that you're talking to when they give you feedback, is that authentic?
Right.
Do you think you're talking to an authentic version of them? Right. Because if somebody were to say like, you know, gosh, I can't really tell. I mean, my perspective here is skewed because I'm really only talking from the lens of the therapist.
Well,
right?
that's what
like,
I'm thinking about it from the guy on the couch. Like, and you mentioned it in the text about performance, and years of performing, right? And just because it's what I know, and it kind of, you know, we're sitting in a treatment center doing a podcast. There was something like if a therapist was wondering if I was being my authentic self, you break somebody down and detox and they're at rock bottom. I don't know how. I mean, all the masks are off at that point.
Yeah.
And it's and there's some work to do from the client, but I wasn't hiding anything by the time I couldn't. It was, I was broke down to my true authentic self, which is a gift. I tell that to people that I do the church group on Saturday nights here that are, you know, you got a room of 25, 30 clients that are days 1 through 30. And it's a real gift to be able to be with them. It's a reminder about, you know, complacency in my recovery, but it's also, there's not a whole lot of performing at that point. People are going through it. They're sick. They're, you know, just had a long family day. So from a client standpoint, because I hope you can get to a point when you're with your therapist, or if I'm with my therapist, that I'm not performing. I'm being authentic, because I think that's probably when the best work gets done. But you're talking about it from a therapist standpoint of being authentic, which that's got to me, that seems like the hardest part maybe for on this Rogers.
Yeah. It's just so, I mean, it's so cool. There is something, you know, at the end of the day, like, since so many things are about relationship, right? Like, since we need one another, and anything that happens to us internally that makes us think that we are separate from one another, that's what deserves grace, right? It's like, wait a second, the primary goal is to be able to feel completely seen and whole as a human, right? Like, and we do that in relationship. And any experience we have that suddenly teaches us, well, you don't deserve that, or like shame does, where shame says, you know, these people might like you, but if they knew this story, they wouldn't like you anymore. And knowing that a place like therapy, a place like any kind of recovery space, hopefully some spiritual and religious places, these spaces where you can kind of test that theory out a little bit, right? Where you can kind of be like, what if I tried to tell this story to see if maybe somebody would hear it and it wouldn't change who I am to them, right? We can never have enough of those spaces, right? Like, because we never know who's going to need them when.
Right.
You know, like we never know who's going to need them when. You know, you never know. You could put, we're sitting here at Illinois Recovery Center, you could put Belleville Recovery Center across the street.
Sure.
And we don't know who's going to need what place when.
No.
And so all we can do is create those spaces. And if those spaces get created with any kind of inauthenticity or any kind of real conditional regard for humans, right, they're going to miss it. They're going to miss the opportunity that you and I are talking about. They're going to miss the opportunity to really hold space for people who need some grace in their lives until they can provide it for themselves. And we can't control that. You don't know who's going to show up when. You don't know who needs what when, but you know what you offer. You know, you can know, what you offer and when you offer it, right? That's where boundaries come in.
Yeah.
Right? It's like like knowing that here's the space that I offer and when I offer it. And that I owe it to the people that come and talk to me to make sure that I can be present and focused and there. That this is what I offer, and I'm going to show up, and I'm a human. I might misstep, or I might have moments of distraction. It's not some constant thing, but that's part of being a human.
Yeah.
But these spaces, every time, to go to a point you made earlier, every time we experience grace, and we get more and more likely to be that kind of compassionate for others.
Yeah.
That's how you create those spaces, right? We don't create them just in like 12-acre grounds, right? We create them in the space between two people. The availability that we have, the moments of, making an obvious choice to just be kind to somebody, or check on somebody.
Yeah.
And when you check on somebody, it's not necessarily, hey, how are you doing? Through the lens of, if you're going through it right now, it's, hey, how you doing? Because I'm somebody that asks you how you doing.
Right. Yeah.
One of these days you're going to answer.
I'm here. Yeah.
And I just think that when we think about, building our own kind of inner structure for forgiveness and building our own inner structure for grace, there's never enough models for it. There's never enough space. So what we do is we create space and create space and create space. And that space is internal and out.
We
external.
Could go down real rabbit holes on a whole different show about when you're talking about building those spaces. And I think of, because there's so many churches and spiritual destinations that get it so wrong and brutalize people, but it starts with trying to do it the way you're talking about it and be an endless space for grace, and then somehow it becomes the inauthentic. That's what I was thinking about when you're talking about, what we're building here, what we built here. If somebody were to build another building across the street, it better be done with that authenticity and the unconditional regard instead of conditional. Otherwise it can be, brutally harmful, especially people that need it.
Well, it's also terrifying, the vulnerability that we're talking about. And places that, let's say, get it wrong, or people that get it wrong, or people that get it right for a while and then they start to get it wrong. A pretty human thing to have happen, right?
Sure.
Like, you start believing that what you say is correct. You're going to start thinking that what you say is original, and
I think most places that have gotten it really wrong, and even, disastrously wrong, probably started off they didn't start off to be complete assholes. They, for a lack of a better term, because that's, I'm not super profound, but the way you just described it, I think that's how a lot of places that got it wrong and harmed a lot of people started off the right way.
Sure. Yeah. It's just something that there's commitments along the way, and kind of like recommitting to doing things a certain way or to creating space a certain way. You recommit constantly. And that kind of self-evaluation, I mean, this is even talking about, does your therapist have a therapist kind of a discussion,
Do you?
Yeah, of course.
Not that you're mine.
Yeah. Shout out to Dr. Jill.
Right. We've talked about Dr. Jill quite a bit.
And so, but like that process of kind of committing to alleviate suffering or to provide some kind of grace, like your recommitment to that process has to be pretty constant, and that
Kinetic.
is probably relational, right? That is probably like who holds you accountable at the top of a list if you run someplace, or who gives you feedback, or are you willing to take feedback? And I think a lot of times, like when we really start to identify with being helpful, when anybody starts to identify with being helpful, they're going to start to think that it's them that's helpful, that it's not the process and the safety and the space and the relationship and the attunement and the intuition and the safety.
Yeah.
Right. It's all of those different things that are doing it. It's going to, as soon as somebody starts to think like, I'm the one that is helpful here and I'm the reason that people are being helped, it's going to be more about that individual than it's going to be about the help. And some of that is human, because if we are worried historically that we're not good enough, and then we start hearing that we're good enough at something, we're going to want to own it. And you can't own grace. You can't own self-compassion. You can't own forgiveness, you just keep creating spaces that offer it.
We're 90 days into Underground, and it's time. I'm glad we're talking about this. This is in all seriousness, the guy that I learned from in Denver is going to be in town at the end of the month doing a conference, right. And he's going to guest preach. He's an actual pastor, and do the story. And I don't go often as much as you. His name's Ryan Canada. As much as you talk about all your mentors and people you learned from, between Miofsky and then learning how he did something so different for the community of people in recovery. I sat him down for dinner and I said, I'm starting on third base. I'm feeling guilty, and I'm going to copy what you do. Basically, you this is so great. We need it. And even probably call it something different because of the resources of the church that wants to do this. And he said, that's why we did it. So people, I didn't create it to keep it. Yeah. We did it so people can. And I was so impressed with his fucking lack of ego. I'll never forget that, because I mean, if I'm in his shoes, as some stranger's coming out, he checks out my thing, it's doing some great stuff in recovery, and then is going to go emulate it, slap a different brand on it. And I mean, that would, then his ability to be humble and say, this ain't mine. Yeah. This is for the world. Go create space. But I won't live with myself without giving him a shout out every step of the way. Yeah. I got his free recovery here on the table. And they started the one with in Chicago that we went and checked out. So I'm excited for him. If he's in town, take the stay. The stage is yours.
That's cool.
But I thought of all that as you were talking about, checks and balances and making sure that we're holding ourselves accountable, because when we think we're that ego, we're all humans. We all have an ego. And when it starts getting a little bit out of control, it's good to, it never leads us anywhere good. So,
yeah. One of the primary steps in practicing self-compassion. So this is the work of Kristen Neff. One of the primary steps is what she refers to as common humanity. That while you're going through the process of this, how can I be, what do I need? What am I concerned about? What is maybe the thing that I am not providing myself a lot of compassion and grace surrounding, is you do this step of common humanity, which is to remember that as the old poet Terence said, nothing human is alien to me, meaning that it's common humanity. I'm not experiencing anything that human beings never experienced.
It goes back to your this ain't original.
Yeah. Like, I'm not experiencing anything another human being hasn't experienced. And it's not to trivialize suffering.
No.
It is to remind yourself that this is, if you're having a human experience, it's a human experience. It is something that humans have gone through. Somebody has gone through this experience, and that you are just as worthy of the grace and forgiveness and patience of anybody else that's gone through it.
I hear you say that, and I hear I'm not alone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we think when we're at the pit of our rock bottom, or in the pit of our grief, life-changing grief, that we're just all alone.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's kind of like, if you're not careful, it's where it starts, right? That's where you really start to think, well, I got a story here and I better not tell it.
Tell it, shout it from a mountain.
And instead it's like, find that space that can hold it, find that container, and, realize that it's, nothing human is alien to me. If anything that a human has been through, I too may be through. Amen, and somebody has been through it.
This was great.
Yeah.
You got your Substack going.
Yeah.
How do they find it?
Find your light source on Substack.
Okay. So. And that's the website of your practice.
Yeah.
findyourlightsource.com. Yeah. So if you guys, if they can't find a space for you, and between the 6 clinicians, you have a whole network of people that I tell people about IRC. Like I would send Charlie here if he had an addiction, and I know you, with your network of people you refer to, you would send your own to that.
What we believe in is therapy.
Yeah, sure.
And so what we believe in is the relationship that can be provided by therapy. And so we'll help.
Yeah.
We'll help you find somebody if it's not us, and or if nothing else, just hearing a discussion about therapy, making somebody curious about therapy. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of good therapists out there. Like anything, it's scary as hell. You might talk to somebody that's not a good fit. You might have already talked to a couple of people that weren't a good fit. You might be looking at something, a different direction, you might be thinking, well, gosh, I want to find a coach or somebody more holistic, or somebody that's doing alternative kind of healing stuff. Great. Do that.
Sure.
Yeah,
sure.
Absolutely do that. But anything that fosters your curiosity, anything that allows you to say, I would like to get to know myself better. I would like to get to reflect on myself without all this damn criticism that I beat myself down with. I'd like to find a way to know myself that includes grace and forgiveness and self-compassion. Anytime that question comes up, do not stop pursuing spaces that are going to hold it.
It's incredible.
Hopefully somebody needed to hear that.
That's the sign off right there. All right, man. Thanks again, Chaz.
Appreciate you, brother.
All right. Love you. See you guys.